Hey there guys, I'm just doing this meditation retreat today, and I just got done with the second session, and Josh asked a very interesting question about MMA fighters and them being religious and how effective that is. And he watched an interview where he felt this guy was feeling envious, right, of the fact that religious fighters tap into a space mentally that others cannot. I want to agree with this statement. I think religion places a lot of structure in people's lives. And this is, of course, this video is my perspective. As you guys know, I don't really have to give a disclaimer here. I think I'm going to start giving a disclaimer in the description of the video. You know what I mean? So, belief by itself in anything, whether it be a higher power or, let's say, a loving aunt, or any kind of thing that has this personal touch to it, gets you to really believe in something, and that power of belief creates the power of resiliency, right? And so that's really what you want to understand is, yes, there is this concept of this transcendence or this idea of God, right? Which is putting you in contact with this ideology, this higher context almost, that stretches the dimensions of your mind in order to get into more of a pocket or a flow state as you're fighting, right? So it could be also self-indulgent for a lot of these fighters, or narcissism for a lot of these fighters as well. But I do believe that there are genuine fighters with religious beliefs, and it's always a great understanding when two religious fighters are going head to head. And it's like they give God as much love for their victory as they do like the coach or anybody else, right? And that is really starting to understand that the power of religion starts from you doing a practice over and over and over again, right? It's drilling one thing until it's hardwired in second nature, right, into our beingness. So beliefs, oftentimes it starts at youth, right, where the subconscious mind is activated. So someone growing up in a religious context has a different understanding than someone who just, carried the Bible for a week and held it in his hand before his fight or something like that, you know what I mean? Or someone who just chanted some mantra or something right before they started to fight or something like this. So once you start to understand that the context where the fighter is coming from is transcendent, which means there is this grand concept that stretches their ego, okay? Their ego is not just me. I'm not fighting this person. It could be that I am fighting myself. That's a religious connotation, right? Or a spiritual connotation, in a sense, that we are all one. As Bruce Lee said, there is no I, right? There is no opponent, because, there is no I. And this understanding is a really, really important one, right? That we have to consider when it comes down to this thing. So my own understanding, and I've changed, as you guys saw, right? Like my floor is now MMA mats, where I'm going to be doing yoga and flow training, basically. So flow training, what it is it's a combination of yoga, calisthenics, qigong, and a bunch of different exercises. And now I'm also applying some bioenergetics into the mix, which is going to be a different form of flow training. Other form of flow training comes from a guy named Mike Chang. You might have known him from Six Pack Shortcuts, okay, back in the day. But then he really transformed his life, went through a spiritual awakening, and now he's all about the flow. Okay, so start to understand that there's certain people in that context which will give you such a blueprint towards understanding what is really going on, okay? Like, he really understood the blueprint from studying from all of these different schools, right? and to merge them all together like a Jeet Kune Do method, like how Bruce Lee did it, I've started to understand my own omnist perspective of like trying to find the truth in all religion, in a sense, like trying to squeeze out the essence of the love, the compassion, whatever it is, the surrender, right? The receiving from this higher power, where it's, back in the days, they used to have spirit guides, right? Where they used to believe that these spirit guides or these gods would give them powers in different things. Now, I think back in that context, it could have been very, very powerful, okay? For them to believe like this. Why? Because let's say, for example, not even a fighter, let's say you're an artist, right? You're an artist and you're creating art. If you make that art about you, and martial art, right? MMA. So if you make that art just about you painting, being the painter as the artist, you are taking away from the fact that there's something greater at play here. So to say that it is, this spirit guide giving me some guidance and speaking through me, it is giving that context a greater reservoir. You get what I'm saying? Like, you could oftentimes not have this giant ego that crumbles you, right? As you're fighting, like, I'm the fighter, I gotta show up for my parents and my family and my, thing. Instead, it's like, hey, God is there, right? And God is there to protect me. So it takes you out of this minuscule human context to almost a grand or overarching context of, divinity, right? And so once you really get this understanding of, okay, this practice of fighting, you got to really fall in love with it, right? Like, if you make fighting a part of your identity, which religion is a part of people's identities, we got to understand this too. So it's this battle of ego and egolessness that is happening, because as you're fighting, you're going through ego death. You're not really you, in a sense. You're channeling something, you're tapping into something else, right? But then some people would also argue like, oh, then, if God, will help this individual, we don't have to worry about like performance enhancing drugs or all of these other things, right? If God is the best performance enhancing drug already there, why would we need all this extra stuff to try to compensate for the divinity that is already there? You see what I'm saying? So this is another argument, and I understand that argument too. But you've got to understand, what does it mean to you to be religious? Because I would say that I don't follow a religion, but I am a religious man. What does that mean? I have rules, right? I have regulation, I have discipline, right? I have this ability to, get up and meditate or to do these things. Like right now I'm at a retreat. My dad is hosting it, actually. He's in his meditation center. So this is a very, very important context, and something that I heard my dad say actually in today's lecture. He was talking about, how things can just distract us from our spiritual journey, right? Like, there's Brazil versus Argentina, there's this match going on, there's this other thing happening, there's this random phone call in the middle of nowhere, the hot water stops working. There's all these little distractions that come up along the way that almost, he used the analogy of like turning a hot water on and off, right? So if you're turning water that you're trying to boil to make tea, and you go from, cold, hot, cold, hot, cold, hot, you turn it on and off, that water is never going to boil. It's going to take a really long time to boil, right? So the same with your meditation, your spirituality, your discipline, or your regulare, or your religion, right? You are setting it up in such a way that there's a momentum building and there is energy being maintained through the belief not only the belief, attachment to a scripture of some sort, okay, which is also important in the context of a lot of major religions, but also the lineage is important. Like, for instance, in this practice of Vajrayana, in that tradition, it's all about the lineage that follows before it, right? So one teacher passes it on to another teacher, who passes it on to another teacher, and it just keeps going from there, right? And so this long lineage of practitioners have been forming. So we got to understand other people's contexts when it comes down to religion and fighting, because sometimes these two things seem counterproductive, right? In a certain sense, like if you're talking about, pacifism and so forth, right? How do you interpret this into a context, right? But people can make religion an avenue for anything that they do. I mean, they have holy wars. Think about that, right? So the fact that these fighters are tapping into something outstanding, right? Or transcendent. I like the word transcendent because it's like transcending, right? As my mentor says. So that's kind of this context of like, okay, I'm fighting, I'm going to win, okay? And if my win is determined on my religious teachings and doctrine, then I'm going to equate it to the match. Let's say that you lose. Let's say that you lose in regards to you praying and doing all the work. Then what is your justification? I think you'll still have a justification, actually, because your belief is that strong and hardwired that you're gonna find a way to justify why you lost, and that person wanted it more than you, okay? That person wanted it more than you. So maybe that person is more religious than you, okay? Religious people are like the right-brained nerds, okay? What do nerds do? Nerds lock themselves up and they start reading books and they get into the left brain of the logical mind and they fill up their logical mind and they love ingesting information. It's nerdy, right? But it's fun for them. Now, you take the nerd in the spiritual context, someone like me, you know what I mean? Like, that's basically me, who dives into the secret tradition. And why is it secret? It's not really secret, it's discreet, okay? This is also what I got from my father. So this understanding of virtue and, someone can justify, God has justice, but then he doesn't have grace. God has grace, but then he doesn't have this, right? But God is this all-encompassing thing that connects all of us to this experience. And so, G-O-D, as we call it in Primal Sutra, right? We call it an acronym, G-O-D, because we really believe we're gods in training. Not trying to be gods, you know what I mean? But it's like we all have that divine spark that is within us, and we just forgot. This present physical world made us forget the connection to all of these hidden realms and deities and all the stuff that's going on, right? And so once you understand this, it's going to shift your perspective. Okay, that's the main thing that's happening, is your perspective is shifting, right? So once your perspective shifts, then you can understand, how can I make this thing the greatest possible outcome for me? Okay, within the context of religiosity or religion. So I understand, okay, maybe I'm Muslim, maybe I'm Hindu, okay? As a Muslim, I'm praying 5 times a day, I'm celebrating Ramadan, I'm Eid, and so forth, right? I'm going through the process, and, you can use that energy of religion to train. Think about that, right? Like, you can use the context of a ritual and use it for the fight ritual beforehand, because it's already something that you do. So you praying before your fight can actually help you tap into something that you've been building over time. Okay, I'm sure fighters don't just randomly start praying, right? They've been doing it for a while. It's a part of their identity. And so that's why it works as this context. And hey, whoever that guy was, man, I get it. Like, there is this level of determinism and devotion, or bhakti, that comes from some of these fighters who are, you know, tapped in, so to say, tapped into the divine, to the divine source of all. And, you know, everyone will have their different opinions around this, and I think it's incredible. The fact that he's envious of them means that he has a potentiality to have that same level of discipline. You get it? Because when we're envious about something, it's merely reflecting to us that there is something missing in our own game, in our own, you know, game is the best word for it, like in our own context. I've said the word context so many times in this video, damn. Wildin'. And now you guys have found my ride, you know what I'm saying? This is how I roll around. Just with some flowers in the front like that, just like that, okay? So I hope this helps you out, guys, and this video gives you a different context. Again, oh, we gotta put a counter, right, on this video, how many times I said context. And understand that your belief in anything will give you an incredible outcome. May the flow be with you and stay legendary. May we never be the same again. Hit that subscribe button if you're new. Let's go.